Hello, and welcome to the first video in my biology lab series. I'm Mrs. G, and today I'm going to be showing you how to classify living things using a dichotomous key. So most biology curriculums begin by defining what are the requirements that make something a living thing. So let's review those first. Number one, all living things have DNA, which is a copy of their genetic code that can be found in every single one of their cells. This genetic code contains the instructions that makes that living organism what it is. Number two, all living things maintain a stable internal environment. There's a word for this, it's called homeostasis. This is one of the reasons that my body temperature is gonna stay right around 98 degrees, even if I go outside and play in the snow in the winter when it's 20 degrees outside. My body's gonna work really hard to maintain a stable internal environment, and it doesn't just refer to temperature. Things like the acidity, each of your organs have a specific pH level that they exist at to be healthy, and there are lots of other things that remain stable to keep you alive. Number three, living things can obtain energy and they can remove waste, okay? And depending on what kind of living thing you are, you're gonna do that in different ways. For example, if you're a plant, you're gonna obtain energy by using the sunlight to produce your own food through photosynthesis. If you're not a plant, you're probably going to eat things that eat plants or something like that down the line. And then once you have obtained that energy, you're also able to use what you can to help you perform all of life's processes and then remove all of the excess stuff that you're not going to use, which is waste. Number four, all living things can reproduce. Now, there are some exceptions to this, and when I was a teacher, I had some students that really love to point out something like a mule, for example. They are famously sterile. They do not reproduce. Does that mean that a mule is not actually a living thing? No, it's just an exception to the rule. There are very few exceptions like that, but there are some, okay? Number five, living things can respond to their environment or can respond to stimuli is another way to say that. That means if somebody were to suddenly shine a really bright light in my eyes, what's gonna happen? My pupils are going to like constrict because it's way too much light and I'm gonna squint. That's me responding to my environment. If something just can't respond to anything, like a rock, if I kick a rock, it's not going to wince or curl up in a ball or move away from me. It's not a living thing. It doesn't respond to its environment. And then number six, living things can grow and develop. And those are actually two different things. Growth is for something to get physically bigger. So it doesn't mean that you're maturing, it just means that you're physically getting larger. Development means to mature. So if I always told my students that if a living thing were to grow and not develop, we would just have a whole bunch of really big babies. And if a living thing were only to develop and not grow, we would have a bunch of little tiny adults. So you have to have growth and development for something to be a living thing. Now, it's important to know that there are over 1 million different kinds of living things that exist, with many, many more projected to exist at this point. So with such an incredible abundance of organisms on Earth, it's really helpful for scientists to be able to classify them into groups with organisms that relate to other organisms. They might have some similarities with one another. So one tool that scientists use to group organisms together with other similar organisms is a dichotomous key. Okay, so on my screen here, I have a simple example of one of those dichotomous keys. I made this one up for this video, so let's notice a few different things about this tool. First of all, on the bottom, I have included 6 different pictures of common bird species, okay? I've chosen these ones on purpose because hopefully you already know what some or all of them are. This will allow you to be able to check yourself on whether you are using the key correctly or not, because if you're trying to classify the cardinal and you get great blue heron as your answer, hopefully that'll put up some warning flags in your head. So our goal here is going to be to use the dichotomous key to correctly identify each of the 6 birds below. Now notice that this key is made up of 5 groups of statements with 2 statements within each group. So all we're going to do is pick one bird to focus on. We're going to start with the first group of statements, decide between the 2 statements in that group which one best goes with the bird that we chose. And then in the last column of the key, we're just going to follow the instructions to tell us which group of statements to go to next. And we'll keep doing that until we get to our answer. Okay, so let's work through an example together. I'm going to go ahead and start with the bird at the bottom labeled number 1. Now you may already know that this is a cardinal, so hopefully at the end of this example we're going to come to the answer cardinal, and if we don't, we know we did something funky. So first we're going to go ahead and just look at box number 1 and the two statements A and B, and we're going to decide which one best goes with our bird number 1 that we're trying to classify. So the two statements there are that the organism is a songbird or the organism is not a songbird. Now, if you don't live in an area that has cardinals, you may want to get a guidebook from the library or use the internet to help you. But if you do know anything about cardinals, you know that they are most definitely songbirds. So statement A is the best answer. If I move directly across from that into the last column, I'm going to get the instructions to go ahead on to box number 2. Okay, so moving on to box number 2, statement A says that the male and female of this species look extremely similar, and statement B says that the male and female of this species look different, okay? So we should be able to figure out either just by knowing this or using our resources that the female cardinal looks very, very different from the male. Males are bright red and females are a lot more dull, so they can kind of blend into their surroundings. So statement B is the best answer this time. If I move across to the right, my instructions in the last column are going to tell me to go ahead and jump to box number 5. Lastly, in box number 5, statement A says males of this species are bright red. Okay, that seems promising. And statement B says that females of this species have similar coloring to the males, except it's very muted, and their eye stripes are a different color. Okay, so at first glance, you may want to argue that statement B might also be correct because female cardinals are definitely more muted in color than males. However, statement B also seems to make a big deal about eye stripes, and that's just not something that, it's not really a characteristic that cardinals have or are known for. So I'm going to go ahead and say that statement A is the safest option because male cardinals are bright red as the picture depicts. So if I move across to the right and look in the last column, I do in fact see that that tells me the answer should be northern cardinal. So that gives me confidence that I did this correctly. Okay, so at this point, I would encourage you to go ahead and stop the video and try to figure out numbers 2 through 6 by yourself. Here in a second, I'll go ahead and just give you the answers to them. But again, if you don't want to get the answers right away, go ahead and just pause the video and try to figure it out on your own first. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to try numbers 2 through 6 on your own. I'm going to go ahead and give you the answers for those so you can check yourself. So for number 2, you should have gotten tufted titmouse. Number 3 was a black-capped chickadee. Number 4 is a great blue heron. Number 5 is a Canada goose. And number 6 is a white-breasted nuthatch. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about this video, or if you are interested in private tutoring in math and science over video or in person if you live in the Kansas City area, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via email, which will be on the screen. If this video is helpful to you, I would really appreciate you subscribing to my channel. And as I always said to my students before they left my classroom, be good, be safe, and make sure you come back with all of your limbs attached correctly.